"You're not wife material," my fiancé smirked, moments before dropping to one knee and proposing to my sister at our family barbecue. Applause. Cameras. Her fake tears. I said nothing. The next morning she found his ring, a $30 knockoff with a note. "Cheap. Like your taste." I'd already uploaded the cheating footage to our family group. Wedding off. Reputation ruined. I toasted them from Santorini. "I love watching you sleep," Greg had whispered to me countless times. That night, it was my turn to watch him sleep, peacefully, guiltlessly, while scrolling through 67 text messages between him and my sister. Messages that shattered 4 years of trust in 4 minutes of reading. The glow of his phone illuminated his face, handsome even in betrayal, as my world collapsed silently around us. "I'm with her now. Just counting the hours until I can see you again. She has no idea. God, we're awful people, aren't we? Worth it though. I've never felt this way about anyone." Each message was a knife twisting deeper. I hadn't been looking for evidence. I'd simply reached for his phone to silence an incoming text at 2 a.m. One notification from work Project M was all it took. Melissa, my own sister, saved under a fake contact. Password protection disabled because he'd fallen asleep mid-conversation with her. The universe has a twisted sense of humor sometimes. 3 hours earlier he'd made love to me, whispered plans about our future children. Now I sat motionless on our bed, understanding that everything, our engagement, our house hunt, our shared dreams, had been built on quicksand. I didn't cry. Not then. Something colder, harder took hold instead. I carefully placed his phone back exactly as I'd found it, screen dark, and watched him breathe for another hour, memorizing the face of the man I'd thought I knew. Greg had always been the reliable one in my life. While my parents focused on Melissa's dance recitals and academic achievements, I'd built my world around Greg's steady presence. His accounting job wasn't glamorous, but his predictability was my anchor. Every day he'd call at lunch, home by 6:30, takeout on Fridays. That consistency had been my safety net after years of living in Melissa's shadow. The signs had been there for weeks, maybe months. The declined dinner invitations with my parents. The late nights at work. The sudden interest in his appearance. New clothes, a gym membership, cologne I hadn't purchased. But trust is a powerful blinder. I'd created explanations. Stress at work, a desire to look good for our upcoming wedding, simple coincidences. "Everything okay, babe?" he'd asked the previous weekend when I questioned a 2-hour disappearance during a trip to the mall. "Just grabbing coffee with a client who happened to be shopping." The slight flush on his neck should have been my warning, but I'd nodded and squeezed his hand. Now I wondered if Melissa had been waiting in some coffee shop corner, checking her watch impatiently for my leftovers. The morning after discovering the texts, I became someone else. Someone with a mission. I served Greg breakfast, kissed him goodbye, and then systematically began hunting for every scrap of evidence. His laptop password, my birth date, the irony, granted me access to months of emails. The location history on his Google account showed dozens of visits to addresses near Melissa's apartment. Photos in his recently deleted folder showed glimpses of her apartment I recognized from family gatherings. I called in sick to work that day and the next. Methodically, I created folders, screenshots, backups. Not once did I break down, though my hands shook so badly at times I had to sit on them until the tremors passed. There would be time for falling apart later. Now was for gathering ammunition. The final confirmation came on day 3. I followed him during a supposed lunch meeting, watching from my car as he parked at the little Italian restaurant where we'd had our first date. The restaurant where he'd proposed. 5 minutes later, Melissa's blue Honda pulled in. I took photos as they kissed at the entrance, his hand lingering possessively on her lower back, precisely where it had rested on mine countless times. I could have stormed in, created a scene. Part of me wanted to drag her out by her perfectly highlighted hair, to scream until my voice gave out. Instead, I drove to an electronics store and purchased 3 hidden cameras. Home security, I told the sales clerk with a smile that felt foreign on my face. Can never be too careful these days. That evening, while Greg showered, I installed the first camera in our living room disguised as a phone charger. The second went into a bookshelf in the bedroom. The third would wait until I could access his office. The monitoring app on my phone showed crystal clear feeds of our most intimate spaces. Spaces now contaminated by questions about whether they'd been together in our bed on our couch. "You seem distracted," Greg noted over dinner, reaching for my hand. "Wedding stress." "Just tired," I replied, squeezing his fingers and wondering if they'd touched my sister hours earlier. "Nothing a good night's sleep won't fix." The camera footage delivered within days. Greg pacing our living room, speaking intently on the phone. "I know it's complicated. I can't just break it off with her immediately, it would raise too many questions. Yes, I figured out how to do it publicly so she can't make a scene. I promise after the barbecue it'll be just us." Each night became a ritual of evidence collection. I created spreadsheets tracking their meetings, correlating them with his excuses to me. I saved audio clips, labeled photographs, built a meticulous timeline of their betrayal. The grotesque intimacy of knowing exactly when and how they deceived me became almost numbing. 3 weeks in, I discovered they'd been meeting for nearly 7 months, since right after our engagement. The timeline suggested their affair had begun at my engagement party. The champagne toast Melissa had given, tears in her eyes as she welcomed Greg to the family, took on a sickening new meaning. The cameras captured Greg on the phone with her late one night while I visited our mom. "The barbecue is perfect. Your parents will be there to witness it. No, Evelyn won't suspect a thing until the moment it happens. I've got the ring already." My heart froze. Our father's retirement barbecue was 3 weeks away. Whatever they were planning would happen there, in front of my entire family. The pieces clicked into place. A public humiliation. My sister had always thrived on being the center of attention, and apparently she needed an audience for her final victory over me. The devastation that had been building like a wave finally crashed one night in our shower, where the sound of water concealed my breakdown. I slid down the tile wall, hugging my knees, letting out silent screams that made my throat raw. I gave myself exactly 20 minutes to fall apart before standing up, drying off and returning to my spreadsheets. In my darkest moments, I considered simply confronting them, ending the charade. But something deeper, colder kept me methodical. If they wanted a public spectacle, they would get one, just not the one they were planning. The betrayal deserved more than a private conversation, more than tears and accusations easily dismissed as a jealous sister narrative. For nearly 3 months I maintained the perfect facade. I discussed wedding venues, pretended to work on guest lists, even had lunch with Melissa where she helped me choose flowers while wearing earrings Greg had purchased on our joint credit card. "You seem different lately," my mother commented during one family dinner. "More confident." If she only knew that what she was seeing wasn't confidence but the calm calculation of a woman with nothing left to lose. What I'd lost in love, I'd gained in clarity. Every fake smile, every pretend kiss with Greg, every sisterly hug with Melissa was one step closer to the moment I would reveal exactly who they were, and exactly who I had become. As the barbecue approached, I made my final preparations. The cameras had given me everything I needed. Their words, their plans, their betrayal documented in high definition. They thought they held all the cards. They had no idea I'd been counting them as they dealt from the bottom of the deck. The night before the barbecue, I slid into bed beside Greg, my face a perfect mask of contentment. "I'm excited about tomorrow," I said truthfully. "I think it's going to be a day none of us will ever forget." He pulled me close, kissed my forehead and agreed. For once we weren't lying to each other. I woke before sunrise the day after overhearing Greg's final confirmation about their barbecue plans. My mind was unusually clear, focused. I'd spent weeks collecting evidence of their betrayal. Now it was time to set my own stage. During breakfast, I casually mentioned Dad's retirement barbecue. "I was thinking we should make a special announcement there," I suggested, stirring cream into my coffee. "Maybe finally set a wedding date? Everyone will be there, and it would make Dad's celebration even more special." Greg nearly choked on his toast. Don't you think that might steal your dad's thunder?" I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Dad would love it. Besides, Mom's been pestering me about save the dates." I watched his eyes dart away, calculating. "But if you think it's a bad idea..." "No," he said quickly. "You're right. The barbecue would be perfect." I smiled, knowing he was mentally revising whatever script he and Melissa had prepared. "Great. I'll tell Mom to make sure Melissa can make it. She's been so busy lately I hardly see her." The mention of my sister made his jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. I'm sure she'll be there, he said, voice carefully neutral. It's her dad's retirement too. That afternoon I called my mother, making a show of checking my calendar while Greg pretended not to listen from the couch. The barbecue sounds wonderful, Mom. Greg and I were actually hoping to share some news there. I winked at him conspiratorially. Can you make sure everyone comes? Especially Melissa. She's been so distant lately. My mother sighed. You know your sister. Always busy with something. But I'll make sure she's there, don't worry. Perfect. With one conversation I'd established my blissful ignorance while ensuring both betrayers would attend. Greg visibly relaxed after my call, even suggesting we watch a movie together. The first time in weeks he hadn't manufactured an excuse to check his phone in private. Playing the oblivious bride-to-be became my greatest performance. I started leaving bridal magazines open to reception venues, pinned wedding dresses on shared Pinterest boards, and even scheduled a cake tasting for the week after the barbecue. Each action was carefully calculated to reinforce their belief in my ignorance. You seem excited about the wedding lately, Greg commented one evening as I browsed honeymoon destinations. Just ready to make it official, I replied, looking up with practiced adoration. After all this time planning, I'm excited to finally be Mrs. Thompson. The lie tasted bitter, but his relieved smile confirmed my performance was working. Meanwhile, I was methodically dismantling our shared life. I visited my bank during lunch breaks, opening a separate account and transferring portions of my savings, small enough amounts that Greg wouldn't notice on our joint statements. I contacted our landlord about breaking our lease, citing a potential job opportunity that hadn't materialized yet. Just exploring options, I assured Greg when a lease termination form accidentally appeared in our mail. Nothing definite. He accepted this without question, likely relieved at the prospect of an easy exit after his planned public humiliation. The engagement ring presented a particular challenge. Greg had spent a considerable sum on it, $8,500 that should have gone toward our house down payment. The princess-cut diamond in a platinum setting had once symbolized our future. Now it represented nothing but lies. I found the jeweler's receipt in his desk drawer while searching for more evidence. The same drawer contained a small velvet box, presumably containing Melissa's ring. I didn't open it. Some wounds weren't worth inflicting on myself. During an afternoon when Greg was meeting clients, I visited a jewelry district across town where no one would recognize me. A small shop specializing in replicas provided exactly what I needed. A near-perfect copy of my engagement ring for $30. The zirconia sparkled with artificial brilliance, indistinguishable from diamond to the untrained eye. Anniversary gift? The jeweler asked as he boxed my purchase. Something like that, I replied. That night while Greg showered I made the swap. My authentic ring went into a secure pocket in my purse. Its counterfeit twin took its place on my finger. Greg never noticed the difference. Men rarely do. With 2 weeks remaining before the barbecue, I focused on my escape plan. I renewed my passport on a girls' lunch that I actually spent alone at the passport office. I researched destinations that symbolized new beginnings, finally settling on Santorini, its white buildings and blue domes representing the clean slate I craved. I booked a one-way ticket departing the morning after the barbecue, using points from a credit card Greg didn't know about. A small vacation rental overlooking the caldera would be my sanctuary for 2 weeks, giving me time to recover before facing whatever new life awaited me. Taking a half-day on Friday, I mentioned casually the week before the barbecue. Nail appointment and some errands before the big family gathering. Greg nodded absently, thumbs flying across his phone screen, undoubtedly texting Melissa. No problem. I've got meetings all afternoon anyway. Those errands involved a safety deposit box where I stored my passport, important documents and the real engagement ring. I withdrew enough cash to sustain me for weeks if necessary, divided between different compartments in a new suitcase hidden at my friend Dana's apartment. Dana was the only person who knew fragments of my plan. Are you sure about this? She asked when I dropped off the suitcase. Shouldn't you just confront them? Trust me, I said, hugging her tightly. This is better. The final piece fell into place 3 days before the barbecue. While Greg played golf with colleagues, I composed a note to accompany the fake ring. Cheap. Like your taste. Simple. Direct. Devastating in its brevity. I sealed it in an envelope and tucked it into the side pocket of my weekend bag, alongside a USB drive containing carefully selected footage of their betrayal. The night before the barbecue, I prepared everything with surgical precision. My overnight bag contained only what I needed for one night at my parents' house, plus the materials for my revenge. My real luggage, containing clothes, cash, and necessities for my new life, waited at Dana's. The airline confirmation and rental details were memorized, screenshots saved to an email draft accessible from any device. Standing in our bathroom, I studied my reflection. The woman looking back seemed different, harder around the eyes, mouth set in a determined line. I practiced my expressions: surprise, hurt, dignified silence. Each would serve its purpose tomorrow. Greg wrapped his arms around me from behind, meeting my eyes in the mirror. Early night, he suggested. Tomorrow's going to be a big day. If only he knew how big. I turned in his arms, offering a smile that didn't reach my eyes. The biggest, I agreed. Sleep came surprisingly easily that night. There's peace and certainty in knowing exactly what comes next. As dawn broke on barbecue day, I woke feeling strangely serene. The anxiety and anguish of the past months had burned away, leaving only resolution. I packed the final items in my overnight bag: the envelope with its devastating note, the USB drive, a change of clothes for tomorrow's flight. I double-checked the family group chat was set up properly on my phone, confirming everyone would receive the video simultaneously. Greg bustled around nervously, changing shirts twice, checking his pocket repeatedly, undoubtedly ensuring Melissa's ring was secure. I pretended not to notice, busying myself with a fruit salad for the barbecue that I knew I'd never actually deliver. "Ready?" he asked, keys jangling in his hand, nervousness making his voice slightly higher than normal. I took one last look around our apartment. Once a home, now just a stage set for betrayal. "Absolutely ready," I said, and for the first time in months I wasn't lying. The 40-minute drive to my parents' suburban homes stretched into an eternity. Greg's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his left hand repeatedly patting his jacket pocket where Melissa's ring waited. The radio filled our silence with meaningless pop songs about forever love. "Nervous about something?" I asked innocently as we turned onto my parents' street, lined with familiar maple trees I'd climbed as a child. He startled. "What?" "Oh, just thinking about work stuff." "On a Saturday? At your future father-in-law's retirement barbecue?" I smiled, placing my hand gently on his arm. "Try to relax and enjoy today, okay?" The irony wasn't lost on me comforting him about the stress of his planned betrayal. He attempted a smile that came out more like a grimace. Poor Greg. The weight of deception was clearly getting to him. Balloons tied to the mailbox marked my childhood home. Dad had strung lights across the backyard fence, and the smell of charcoal already filled the air. Several cars were parked along the curb: my uncle's pickup, my cousin's minivan, and near the end, Melissa's blue Honda. "Looks like everyone's here already," I noted, watching Greg's reaction. He scanned the vehicles, lingering on Melissa's car. "Guess we're the last ones," he muttered, checking his hair in the rearview mirror. Mom greeted us at the door with hugs, ushering us toward the backyard where voices and laughter mingled with classic rock from Dad's ancient speaker system. I spotted Melissa immediately, perched on the patio furniture in a sundress I recognized from our joint shopping trip last month. The sundress I'd admired but decided was too expensive. Apparently, Greg's credit card had different standards for her. Our eyes met across the yard, and her smile faltered momentarily before she recovered, waving with excessive enthusiasm. "Evelyn." "Greg." "Finally." She bounced over, hugging me too tightly, her expensive perfume, another familiar scent from Greg's credit card statement, nearly choking me. "Traffic," Greg explained lamely, eyes darting between us. Their nervousness was almost comical, two amateur actors forgetting their lines on opening night. As I moved through the gathering, greeting relatives and accepting congratulations on my engagement, I noticed the first strange looks. Aunt Patricia squeezed my hand a beat too long, her eyes full of something like pity. Uncle Dave started a conversation about my wedding plans, then awkwardly changed the subject when Greg approached. Cousin Michael avoided eye contact entirely. They knew. Or at least they suspected. Near the grill, my father looked unusually somber for his retirement celebration. When I hugged him, his arms tightened around me protectively. You doing okay, Pumpkin? He asked quietly. Of course, Dad. It's your big day. My performance remained flawless, but the knot in my stomach tightened. How many others had Melissa and Greg confided in? Had they been planting seeds, preparing the family for what was about to happen? Mom appeared with lemonade, her smile too bright. Greg, Melissa was just asking about the Henderson's house listing. You know real estate. Maybe you could give her some advice. An obvious setup. Greg nodded eagerly. Sure thing, Mrs. Adams. I watched them drift to a quiet corner of the yard, heads bent close in conversation. Their poor attempt at subtlety might have been painful to witness if I hadn't been so far beyond pain. They're not very good at this, are they? The unexpected voice belonged to my teenage niece, Jenny, who had appeared at my elbow with a plate of potato salad. I kept my expression neutral. At what? Jenny rolled her eyes. Please. Mom told me to be prepared for drama today. Adults think teenagers are clueless. She nodded toward Greg and Melissa. He's been checking his pocket every 2 minutes and she keeps looking at her reflection in her phone screen. Something's up. My heart warmed toward Jenny, this unexpected ally. Want to help me get the extra ice from the garage? Away from prying eyes, I squeezed her hand. Whatever happens today, just remember appearances can be deceiving. Her eyes widened. You know. I simply nodded. Just watch. When we returned, Greg was helping Dad at the grill, while Melissa arranged seating for the meal. The tension in the air was palpable, everyone moving in a strained choreography of forced normalcy. Lunch was served buffet style, and I positioned myself between my elderly grandparents, engaging them in conversation about their recent cruise. Across the table, Greg kept checking his watch. Melissa fidgeted with her hair. My mother's smile grew increasingly brittle as she refreshed drinks and urged everyone to eat. After the meal, Dad stood to make his retirement speech. Family members raised their glasses in toasts, cameras appeared for photos, and the genuine celebration momentarily overshadowed the undercurrent of anticipation. I allowed myself to feel a moment of happiness for my father. 50 years at the same company, respected and admired. At least this part of the day wasn't tainted. As dessert was being served, Greg caught my eye and nodded toward the old oak tree at the edge of the yard. Can we talk for a minute? He asked, loud enough for nearby relatives to hear. The moment had arrived. I followed him, feeling strangely calm, almost floating above the scene. This was simply the final act of a play where I already knew the ending. Under the tree where I'd once had a swing set, Greg turned to face me. His expression was a practiced mixture of regret and resolution. He took my hands in his, the rehearsed gesture making my skin crawl. Evelyn, he began, voice carefully pitched to carry just far enough. These past few months have made me realize something important. He paused, ensuring he had an audience. Several relatives had casually drifted closer, pretending to admire Mom's flower beds. Melissa stood halfway between us and the patio, her face a mask of false concern. I care about you deeply, Greg continued. But I've realized you're not wife material. There was the line he'd rehearsed, the knife he'd chosen to twist publicly. Behind him, I saw my mother's hand fly to her mouth, my father's face darken with anger. I remained silent, watching him flounder in the face of my lack of reaction. What I mean is, he stumbled on, we want different things. And I found someone who understands me better. On cue, Melissa stepped forward, perfectly positioned as cameras emerged from pockets. Greg released my hands and walked toward her, pulling the ring box from his pocket. Several relatives gasped as he dropped to one knee before my sister. Melissa, he announced, voice carrying across the suddenly silent yard, you're everything I've been looking for. Will you marry me? Her practiced tears gleamed in the afternoon sunlight as she covered her mouth in feigned shock. Yes, she exclaimed. Yes, of course. Cameras flashed as he slid the ring onto her finger. A few confused relatives applauded uncertainly. Cousin Michael looked like he might be ill. Aunt Patricia was openly glaring at Melissa. I stood perfectly still, my face deliberately blank. No tears. No screams. No drink thrown or dramatic exit. Just silence, the one response they hadn't prepared for. Their moment of triumph faltered in the face of my composure. Greg's smile became uncertain. Melissa's eyes darted around nervously as the expected drama failed to materialize. My father started toward us, fury evident in his stride, but I subtly shook my head. He stopped, confusion replacing anger. "Congratulations," I said finally, my voice carrying clearly through the awkward silence. "You deserve each other." The simplicity of my response seemed to unnerve them both. This wasn't the script they'd planned for, the hysterical ex-fiancé, the dramatic scene that would justify their betrayal. As relatives converged around them with uncomfortable questions and forced congratulations, I walked calmly to the dessert table, selected a piece of my father's favorite chocolate cake, and brought it to him with a reassuring smile. "I'm okay, Dad," I said quietly. "Trust me." For the next hour, I moved through the gathering with practiced ease, deflecting concerned questions with simple responses. "It's for the best. These things happen. I'm fine, really." Each calm word was another crack in Melissa's triumphant facade. I caught her watching me, uncertainty growing in her eyes as her moment of victory failed to deliver the expected drama, the validation of having won. Greg looked increasingly uncomfortable as relatives cornered him with pointed questions about the timing. As the sun began to set and guests started leaving, I hugged my bewildered parents goodbye. "I'll explain everything tomorrow," I promised, kissing my mother's cheek. "For now, just know I'm much better than I appear." Greg and Melissa left hurriedly, her new ring catching the fading light as they escaped the increasingly uncomfortable scrutiny of my family. I declined offers to stay the night, assuring everyone I needed time alone. As I drove away, I checked my phone to confirm my morning flight was on time. The trap had been sprung perfectly. Now for the final act. The drive back to our apartment, my apartment now, was surreal. Streetlights blurred past as I navigated the familiar route one last time. No tears came. Instead, a strange lightness filled my chest. The worst had happened exactly as planned and I had survived it. The next 12 hours would determine whether 3 months of calculated patience would pay off. The apartment was dark and silent when I arrived. I moved through the rooms methodically, gathering the few remaining items I hadn't already secured. A photo of my grandparents, a small jewelry box from my mother, the leather-bound journal I'd kept since college. These weren't just possessions. They were pieces of my identity that Greg and Melissa couldn't taint. I changed into comfortable clothes, then removed the hidden cameras, erasing all evidence of my surveillance. Next came the final preparations for Melissa's gift. I retrieved the envelope containing the note from my weekend bag, running my finger over the simple message. "Cheap. Like your taste." The words seemed insufficient now after witnessing their performance at the barbecue. I opened the envelope, adding a postscript. "P.S. Check the family group chat at 6 a.m. You'll both be famous." Subtle enough to be intriguing, clear enough to cause a sleepless night. Now for the delivery. I knew exactly where Melissa would look when she arrived here with Greg. The jewelry box on our dresser where I kept my engagement ring when cleaning or showering. Greg had seen me place it there countless times. I positioned the fake ring in its center, note propped against it, knowing Melissa's insecurity would drive her to compare her new ring with my discarded one. People like Melissa needed validation constantly. She wouldn't be able to resist checking. With the bait set, I moved to the kitchen table with my laptop, finalizing my digital revenge. 4 weeks, I'd been editing the footage from my hidden cameras, cutting together the most damning clips into a 7-minute video that told their entire sordid story. The opening scene, Greg on the phone with Melissa in our living room, laughing about how I hadn't noticed a thing. Cut to Greg and Melissa on our couch while I was visiting my parents, his hand sliding up her thigh as he promised to end things with me spectacularly. Cut to Melissa examining my wedding magazine collection, rolling her eyes and mocking my choices while Greg laughed. Cut to their explicit conversation about their intimate moments, deliberately filmed in our bedroom. The ultimate violation. The final clip. Greg rehearsing his "you're not wife material" speech in our bathroom mirror, Melissa coaching him by text on his delivery. I added simple text overlays with dates and times, proving the affair's duration. No dramatic music, no commentary, just raw, unfiltered evidence. Truth needed no embellishment. I scheduled the video to upload to our family group chat at exactly 6 a.m., late enough that they'd have spent the night celebrating their engagement, early enough to ensure maximum family viewership over Sunday morning coffee. Email confirmations for my flight and Santorini accommodation arrived, and I forwarded them to a secure account only I could access. My new burner phone was charged and programmed with essential contacts. Dana had confirmed she would drive me to the airport at 7:30 a.m. Everything was in place. I checked the family group chat one last time, finding it already buzzing with confused messages about the day's events. Mom, Evelyn, please call me. We're worried about you. Dad, what the hell happened today? Greg isn't answering my calls. Aunt Patricia, I always thought there was something off about that young man. I didn't respond. Tomorrow's video would answer their questions more effectively than I ever could tonight. Around midnight, I heard Greg's key in the lock. I froze, suddenly uncertain. This wasn't part of the plan. He was supposed to stay at Melissa's, discovering my departure after the video revealed their betrayal. I slipped into the hallway closet just as the front door opened. Greg entered alone, moving quietly as if trying not to wake me. I watched through the sliver between door and frame as he gathered toiletries, a change of clothes, his laptop. Not staying then, just collecting essentials. He paused at my bedroom door, seemingly debating whether to check on me. After a moment's hesitation, he turned away. Coward. He couldn't even face me after his public performance. As he gathered his things, his phone buzzed repeatedly. He answered in hushed tones. I know, babe. It went perfectly. No, I haven't seen her. I think she's asleep. Just getting some stuff, then coming back to you. She barely reacted, just like we thought. No, her parents were upset, but they'll get over it. I'll grab the ring paperwork too for insurance purposes. Each word cemented my resolve. I remained perfectly still until he left, locking the door behind him. Only then did I emerge, checking that everything remained as I'd arranged it. The fake ring still waited in its trap. The video was still set to upload at 6 a.m. I slept surprisingly well that night, the deep, dreamless sleep of someone who has relinquished uncertainty. My alarm woke me at 5:30 a.m. I showered, dressed, and packed my final items with practiced efficiency. At 5:55, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, phone propped against my water glass, camera ready. I wanted to witness the moment my revenge began. At exactly 6 a.m., my phone pinged with the automated message. Video uploaded successfully to family barbecue chat. I imagined Greg and Melissa waking in her bed, checking their phones as people do first thing in the morning. I pictured their faces as they saw the notification, their confusion turning to horror as they realized what was happening. Within 2 minutes, my phone exploded with notifications. I watched the group chat erupt in real time. Mom, oh my God, Evelyn, is this real? Dad, that son of a... Aunt Patricia, I knew it. Cousin Michael, holy. Did everyone just see that? Melissa started typing, stopped, started again. Greg's name appeared and disappeared from the typing indicator. They were panicking, unsure how to respond to irrefutable evidence of their betrayal playing on 24 family members' phones simultaneously. My parents called 3 times in succession. I sent a brief text, I'm okay. We'll call when I land. Love you. Then came the desperate messages from Greg. Evelyn, please let me explain. This isn't what it looks like. Where are you? Answer me. Melissa alternated between threats and pleas. You had no right to record us. Take it down now. I'm sorry, okay? But this is insane. You're making a huge mistake. At 6:40, a frantic call from Greg. I answered, saying nothing, just listening to his panicked breathing. Evelyn, are you there? Look, we need to talk about what you just did. I'm coming over. I wouldn't bother, I said calmly. I'm not there. And check your precious ring before you do anything else. I hung up, imagining him rushing to Melissa's jewelry box, finding my note, realizing the diamond he'd proposed with was as fake as their relationship. The fallout continued to explode across my screen as Dana's car pulled up outside. Several relatives had formed a separate group chat, excluding Greg and Melissa, expressing their support for me and outrage at their behavior. My teenage niece Jenny had apparently taken charge of the family response, writing, Aunt Evelyn is a queen and I want to be her when I grow up. That message unexpectedly brought my first tears since discovering their affair. I forwarded the most important contacts to my burner phone, then removed my SIM card and slipped it into my pocket. With one last look at the apartment that had witnessed both love and betrayal, I locked the door and walked away. Dana hugged me tightly at the airport curb. Text me when you land, she insisted. And Evelyn, I'm proud of you. The international terminal buzzed with morning travelers as I checked in, passed through security and found my gate. My phone, now with a new temporary number, showed dozens of missed calls and messages from Greg, Melissa, and concerned family members. As boarding began, I sent a single message to my parents with my temporary contact information and a promise to explain everything soon. Then I powered down the phone, feeling the weight of the past 3 months finally lifting from my shoulders. Settling into my window seat, I watched ground crews prepare the aircraft for departure. Somewhere across town, Greg and Melissa were facing the complete destruction of their relationship, their reputations, and any sympathy they might have hoped for from friends and family. The captain announced our departure. As the plane accelerated down the runway, I closed my eyes, feeling the satisfying rumble of engines propelling me forward. Away from betrayal, away from humiliation, toward a future entirely my own. The sweet taste of revenge carried me skyward, 30,000 feet above the ruins of their lives. The 10-hour flight passed in a blur of fitful sleep and mediocre airplane food. When the plane finally touched down in Athens, I felt the distance not just in miles but in emotional space. An ocean between my old life and whatever came next. The connecting flight to Santorini was on a much smaller aircraft, dipping and soaring over the impossibly blue Aegean Sea. As the island came into view, white buildings clinging to volcanic cliffs like freshly fallen snow, I felt something stir within me. Not happiness exactly, but possibility. The thought that beauty still existed in a world where betrayal had become my closest companion. The taxi driver who took me to my rental was a cheerful older man named Nikos who pointed out landmarks with grandfatherly pride. "First time in Santorini?" he asked in accented English. "First time anywhere in a long time," I replied, realizing how true it was. I'd been so focused on Greg, on our future, that I'd forgotten to live my own present. My accommodation was exactly as pictured. A small, whitewashed villa perched on the caldera's edge in Oe, away from the worst of the tourist crowds. Blue shutters framed windows that opened to an endless horizon where sea met sky in a seamless watercolor blend. A private terrace with a small plunge pool offered the perfect vantage point for sunset. The property manager, Elena, showed me around, explaining how to work the ancient coffee machine and where to find the best local tavernas. "You are here alone?" she asked, not unkindly. "Very much so," I answered, surprised at how the words felt like freedom rather than abandonment. After she left, I unpacked my few belongings, showered away the stale airplane air, and collapsed into bed, sleeping dreamlessly for 14 hours straight. I woke to brilliant sunshine streaming through gauzy curtains. For a disorienting moment, I didn't know where I was or why my arm reached automatically for someone who wasn't there. Then it all rushed back. The barbecue, the ring, the video, the escape. I sat up, heart pounding, before realizing there was nothing to fear anymore. The worst had happened. I had survived. Whatever came next was entirely up to me. On the terrace I found breakfast waiting. Greek yogurt with honey, fresh figs, strong coffee. Beside it, a note from Elena explaining she'd taken the liberty since I'd slept so long. This simple kindness from a stranger nearly undid me. I ate watching fishing boats trace ripples across the bay below, my burner phone still powered off beside my plate. When I finally turned it on, dozens of notifications appeared. I ignored the missed calls and opened messages only from my parents and Dana. "Mom, we're so sorry, sweetheart. We had no idea. Are you safe? Dad, that video showed everything we needed to know. Take all the time you need. We're here when you're ready. Dana, checked your old phone. Total meltdown happening. Greg showed up at your parents' house crying. They wouldn't let him in. Your dad apparently used some colorful language. Call me when you can." I smiled, picturing my gentle father finally unleashing his temper on the man who had humiliated his daughter. Instead of immediately calling back, I took a photograph of my view and sent it to my parents and Dana with the message. "I'm safe. I'm healing. I'll call soon." Then I turned off notifications and set out to explore my temporary home. Santorini in early spring was perfect. Warm enough for short sleeves during the day, cool enough for light sweaters at night, and blessedly free from the summer tour groups. I wandered narrow cobblestone streets, ducking into small galleries and family-owned shops. At a tiny bookstore I purchased a leather-bound journal, the first I'd owned that Greg had never seen or touched. That evening I wrote my first entry sitting at a cliffside cafe, sipping local wine as the sun transformed the sky into a painter's palette of orange, pink, and gold. I didn't write about Greg or Melissa or betrayal. Instead, I described the feeling of warm stone under my palms, the taste of olive oil and sea salt, the distant laughter of fishermen returning to harbor. 3 days passed before I called my parents, using the villa's Wi-Fi to avoid international charges. My mother answered on the first ring. "Evelyn. Oh, thank goodness. Are you all right? Where are you?" "I'm in Greece, Mom. And yes, I'm all right or getting there." The concern in her voice nearly broke my composure, but I continued. "I'm sorry I didn't warn you about the video." "Don't you dare apologize," she said fiercely. "Your father and I watched it together. We saw everything. That, she seemed to struggle for words harsh enough. "It's okay, Mom. You don't have to say it. The wedding's off, obviously," she continued. Melissa tried to claim the video was manipulated, but no one believed her after seeing them together at the barbecue. "She's staying with a friend, she can't show her face at family functions right now." And Greg came by twice more, crying and making excuses. "Your father threatened to call the police. He hasn't been back." She paused. "He lost his job apparently. Someone from your family chat forwarded the video to his boss." I hadn't expected that. For a moment I felt a twinge of, not regret exactly, but awareness of how extensively my revenge had spread. Then I remembered his smirk as he told me I wasn't wife material, and the twinge disappeared. "Are you coming home soon?" Mom asked. "Not yet," I replied. "I need some time to figure out who I am without him, maybe who I was before him even." My days fell into a peaceful rhythm. Mornings writing in my journal, afternoons exploring hidden corners of the island. I hiked the ancient trail from Fyra to Oia, photographing wildflowers pushing through volcanic rock, beauty emerging from destruction, nature's own revenge story. In the evenings I began speaking with other travelers and locals. A British woman painting watercolors of the sunset became my occasional dinner companion. The owner of a small pottery studio taught me to throw clay, laughing as my first attempts collapsed into shapeless lumps. "Creating something new is always messy," she told me, reshaping my failed bowl. "But see, the clay isn't ruined. It's just waiting for the next attempt." I thought often about that clay in the following days, how it retained no memory of its previous form, how it responded only to the present pressure of hands shaping it anew. Halfway through my stay, Dana called with updates from home. Greg had been telling mutual friends I'd fabricated evidence out of jealousy, but the video spoke for itself. Melissa had deleted all social media after relentless comments appeared on her posts. Their relationship had imploded spectacularly, with Greg reportedly blaming her for pushing him into the public proposal. "Karma's working overtime," Dana said. "So what's next for you? Coming back to face the music or?" I looked out at the horizon, considering. "I've applied for a remote position with that publishing house I always admired. The one Greg said was a hobby job, not worth pursuing. And interview next week. Via Zoom." Her excitement validated my decision. For the first time in years, I was making choices without filtering them through someone else's expectations. On my final evening in Santorini, I dressed with care in a blue sundress purchased from a local designer. I made reservations at the island's most beautiful restaurant, requesting a private table overlooking the caldera. The maitre d' seated me as the sky began its nightly transformation, candles flickering in blue glass holders. I ordered champagne, not to celebrate destruction but to honor reconstruction. As the waiter poured the first glass, I checked my phone one last time. An email had arrived an hour earlier. "Dear Ms. Adams, we are pleased to offer you the position of remote editorial assistant." Tears blurred my vision, not of grief or anger but of genuine joy. I lifted my glass toward the darkening horizon, where the first stars had begun to appear. "To new beginnings," I whispered. The champagne tasted of possibility and freedom. Behind me lay the ashes of betrayal and the sweet satisfaction of revenge. Before me stretched something far more valuable, a future entirely my own, unshackled from others' definitions of who I should be. Tomorrow I would board a plane not back to the scene of my humiliation but to a new city, a new apartment, a new career. The woman returning was not the same one who had fled. That Evelyn had defined herself by relationships, daughter, sister, fiancé. This Evelyn, tempered by fire and healed by distance, belonged only to herself. I paid the bill and walked slowly back to my villa along moonlit streets. The island air carried the scent of jasmine and salt, of endings and beginnings intertwined. I thought of Greg and Melissa briefly, acknowledging that they had given me an unexpected gift amidst their betrayal, the push I needed to reclaim my own story. My revenge had been perfect, but my recovery would be the true masterpiece. What did you think of Evelyn's perfect revenge? Sometimes the strongest statement is made when you refuse to play the game others have rigged. If this story of calculated payback and personal reinvention resonated with you, tap that subscribe button now. Comment below. Would you have had the patience to execute such a flawless revenge, or would you have confronted them immediately? Join thousands of strategic thinkers. Subscribe free today for more satisfying tales of justice served cold.